Montana. 2 people per square mile. It's wild, it's huge, and here, only the toughest can survive. Rick and Nathaniel are big game hunters. For them, every season is the start to a new adventure.
Fun, excellent.
Scott and Jerry know the mountains better than anyone. They are trappers and proud of it.
I think I may have got one.
The Hollenbecks and Arthens have maintained their family ranch for generations. And they're ready to do whatever it takes to make it last for generations to come.
I'll get the last one.
Welcome to Montana, the land of the Wild West.
Got a kitten track. Okay.
Oh my gosh, big herd elk. Wow. Soft as a flannel diaper.
These are powerful little traps. Whack.
You want to see? Woohoo! Moving now, buddy.
That's how it is around here, I guess.
In Montana, weather conditions in winter are known to change without warning. A blizzard can strike on the eastern part of the state, while at the same time in the west, the sun is shining and the temperatures are above freezing. North of Livingston, Nathaniel Browning, a hunter who employs Native American techniques, was able to enjoy a beautiful sunny day on the banks of No Tellin Creek. He spent several hours looking for the best branches to make his arrows for the next hunting season.
Wow, this is nice and straight.
But after harvesting 3 beautiful pieces, he somehow lost track of the time.
Gotta find somewhere to shelter up because it's gonna get pretty cold tonight.
And in Montana, even if it's beautiful during the day, at night it can be cold. Very, very cold.
Time to go crawl in there and spend the night out in the winter. Good night.
Nathaniel has already spent many nights outside, and his body has learned to withstand the harshest conditions.
You're sitting there in the dark, and it's cold, and you can't really move around very much. So you just have to kind of let your mental attitude take over on that, not focus on the discomfort, and sit it out.
But despite his experience, sleeping in these conditions is far from pleasurable, even for him. With the first glimmers of daylight, the hunter has only one desire: to get out of his shelter.
You've been awake for quite a while in the dark already, waiting to get up and just deciding when I want to start moving so that I'm a little more comfortable and not as cold. And then you get outside and you realize, oh, it's actually colder outside than it is in my shelter.
Very long night last night. You never really get comfortable. You can't stay in one position for long. But it was a long, long night. And I'm glad that the sun's starting to come up. Maybe that'll start warming me up a little bit more with the day.
Thanks to his night out, Nathaniel can go deeper into the forest. He hopes to find the strongest and straightest shafts to be able to make beautiful arrows once he returns home. After 2 hours of walking, he reached an area he had never explored before.
This looks like it's gonna be a good area down through here. Some openings so these small bushes and stuff can grow straight. And crisp and cold, beautiful morning. I think we should have some good luck today. There's hundreds of them. Here we go. This is the one right here. It's the perfect one. It's the last one we need. I knew it would be in this patch somewhere. This is the perfect length, perfect diameter, how thick it is, really straight, and rose is solid, really hard, super hard wood once it dries out. This is going to be a perfect arrow.
After 2 days on the expedition, Nathaniel was able to harvest 4 beautiful branches. The hunter can now go home and turn them into arrows for his bow. Meanwhile, further east, the sun shines on the Beartooth Mountains. During a recent bet at the firing range, Rick, the old hunter, proved to Casey that he was able to hit a target at 800 meters with his old rifle. And the proof was unmistakable.
For that kind of a rifle, shooting that distance, absolutely. That was good shooting.
You owe me a cat hunt.
Yes, I do.
After winning the bet and proving his point, Rick can now take advantage of his prize, a mountain lion hunt with Casey, reputed to be one of the best mountain lion trackers in the region. The mountain lion is a solitary animal, very difficult to spot in nature, even for the most experienced of hunters. But when Casey goes hunting, he has an ally, his dog, Cash.
Mountain lion hunting is difficult. You could be on a hunt that lasts, all day and you never find anything. When we first start on a lion hunt, we'd make sure all of our vehicles are gassed up and ready to go because you never know what's going to happen during the day.
Are you ready to go, Cash? Ready to go find a cat? Here, kitty.
Despite his experience hunting big game, this is the first time that Rick has ever tried to track a mountain lion.
It's totally off the chart from anything I've ever done. I've never hunted behind dogs. I've never been around dogs in this situation. It's traveling into an unknown country. So, Casey, what's your plan?
We're gonna head up the road, see if we can't find any tracks.
I guess we're off and running.
All right, sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
When we're starting out on a hunt, basically we just drive on these roads until we find a lion track, if we do. Once we find one, we have to determine how old it is, how big it is, if we want to chase it or not, depending on the size and kind of direction of where it's heading. Snow is a huge factor in your hunting during the wintertime. Fresh snow works the best, especially when you have a fresh track, because that lion track is, the scent in that track is really strong for the dogs, and they can pick up on it really easy.
The tracking starts off well. With his expert eye, it only takes 10 minutes for Casey to locate the first traces of a mountain lion.
So, you got one found, Casey?
Yeah, they're kind of hard to see right now. That's a tom track, a male, that's what we're after.
Okay, so how?
A tom is a male mountain lion. That's typically what we try to hunt for. On that one, we found that track, which was pretty easy to spot in the snow. I got to feeling around on it, It was frozen solid. It was all iced up, and I knew that there's no way of letting the dogs loose on that track. The scent is what the dogs obviously strive on. And once they hit a spot that's all melted off or wind blown, it makes it really difficult for the dogs to smell it.
And how old did you say it is?
Probably a couple days at least.
A couple days?
Yeah.
The first tracks are too old to be worth releasing cash on the cat's trail. But it's clear that there are mountain lions in the area. The two hunters are expecting to find more fresh tracks as they go. Meanwhile, near the border with Idaho, the Big Hole Valley just got hit with a huge snowstorm. At the home of Scott and Suzy Olson, the snowfalls are really big. You just have to get used to it.
The most I've ever seen is about 30 to 36 inches overnight. It's like living in a snow globe. But over the years, you just learn to put up with snowing. It's snowing. It always seems to be snowing. It kind of creates problems like snow in your eyes, snow down your back, snow down your boots, snow in your gloves, but it's all part of the trail.
But for the Olsons, the snow is not the hardest part. The worst is the cold. And for several weeks now, an Arctic front has made the region one of the coldest winters in 25 years.
Whenever you get that combination of Arctic front coming down from the north, it brings with it its own calling card from Santa's workshop. Start of December until about the middle of March, you're going to be sub-zero almost every morning. Average, 10 to 20 below zero. Extreme, 40 to 60 below zero. When it's that cold, you restrict your travel. You hunker down. You wait it out.
But today, Scott doesn't have the luxury of staying warm. This morning, it's minus 36 degrees Fahrenheit. With these extreme temperatures, the stack of firewood has decreased to dangerous levels, and the Olsons can't survive without the wood.
You have to have the ability to heat water, heat the home, to cook without electricity. Wood, wood, wood. I would that I would have gathered more wood. I would that I had a bigger wood pile all the time. But certain things creep in that we can't control, such as Arctic fronts come in, and you watch your wood pile go down faster than in years past where you have a more mild winter.
Scott has no choice. He heads to the forest with his chainsaw. He definitely has to find a tree to replenish the wood pile.
It's a lot easier to get the tree down in 2 feet of snow than it is in 4, which is coming. So therefore, don't delay, do it today.
Once in the forest, for Scott, the hard part begins. He has to find the right tree to cut down, and most importantly, one that he'll be able to bring home.
This is a great tree for firewood. It's a little big in the bottom, has a lot of branches, but those can be used for smaller firewood. The problem is, when I cut this tree, it's already leaning that way. I've got in the way some big pine trees. If this thing goes down in there and gets locked up, stuck, I've got to get this out. That's a major problem in the snow. Everything in the snow takes a lot more time. It's a lot harder.
Nature has a way of humbling you many times. Cutting down a tree that you thought you'd looked at close, it falls the wrong way. You can spend all day long getting one tree out that fell into another tree and got jammed up in there.
A little bit of time spent selecting the right tree saves you hours if it falls in the wrong spot. And these are not the conditions to get in a hurry.
The ideal tree is probably somewhere in these woods. Just need to find it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the state, near the town of Molt, is an almost near-desert windswept area, and the site of the Hollenbeck family ranch, one of the largest in the region. 5,000 acres to raise cattle, lots of cattle. including 5,000 sheep, 400 cows, 100 goats, and 40 horses. At the Hollenbecks, they're not lacking for work.
Every day is an obstacle, but you can't be centered on trying to conquer one obstacle because there's always another one coming. We get asked all the time, how do you guys do it? I don't really know how we do it. We just do it. And it comes from being a family and everybody working together.
Henry took over the ranch from his father and now manages it with his wife, Sarah, who never expected to operate a ranch in Montana.
Let's see some babies.
Sarah comes from California and has to adapt to the harsh conditions of the region because here, the climate is slightly different.
It's a little different this weather, yeah. I mean, it's funny now because I'll have friends and family in California and it'll be like 45 degrees there. 45 degrees in California for them is like freezing, everyone's dying. And then 45 degrees in Montana is like, put your bikinis on, let's go outside.
I was very concerned about how California would do here. You know, most of the time when people are just do sheep or just do cattle or just do horses, we got it all. And then we throw goats in on top of it.
Ready?
But seeing Sarah in the middle of the ranch with her 9-month-old son, Rhett, it seems like she's been doing this all her life.
All right, kid, you ready to go check on the sheep? See the babies? Want to see the babies? He's been with me pretty much since he's been born. Oh, the babies are all out. When I was pregnant, I couldn't do much. I had a huge belly, mamas. But now that he's a little bit older and he's able to like come in the truck with me or come into the barn with me, it's like a whole new world. You having fun? I think it's good for him too. He's out, he's learning, and hopefully he's staying a strong, independent mom that can kick some butt when she needs to and not have to depend on his father to show up and save me. And then these little twins were born last night. They're so small. Whoa, lady.
For Henry and Sarah, all they have is their land and their animals. And in Montana, even cattle have to adapt to survive.
Jesus, woman. See the babies. Main risks are weather, if there's too much snow. Also, we have a bigger threat with like coyotes coming in. And also birds are a big thing too that go after baby lambs. And they'll kind of dive down and peck their heads till they're dead. So that's no fun. It's a 2% death loss on all of our livestock. We look out for sick ones and make sure we treat them as soon as possible and do what we can to make sure that not as many die. You're so little.
Today is an important day for the Hollenbecks. The veterinarian will ultrasound the flock of ewes to determine which ones are pregnant.
Hello, Dr. Rowe.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
And the number of lambs born at the ranch is vital to the survival of the Hollenbeck Ranch. It's a determining factor for their family's income.
Watch your head.
Yeah.
The day is long. Today, Dr. Rowe will perform more than 400 ultrasounds. Meanwhile, at Canyon Mountain, Nathaniel allows the branches he collected in the woods to dry out for several days. He can now start making his arrows. The first step, make the branches as straight as possible.
Now that they're at a semi-dried stage, I can start taking the bark off of them and they'll start drying out faster. And they'll hold the straightness a little bit better over time as they dry out.
Nathaniel has spent many years perfecting his skills.
This one's gonna be pretty good.
He uses the same techniques as some of the Plains Indians who occupied the great American West.
Whether it was the Crow or whether it was Lakota, any of the Western tribes would be using these, or the Northern Cheyenne would use these type of arrows.
Its general shape is straight, but it's got some little kinks and bends in it still. The easiest way to know if it's right is to actually feel it. Your hands are a lot more sensitive and aren't gonna lie to you the same way that your eyes will fool you.
Nathaniel is a perfectionist. Throughout the process, he tries to make sure that each of his actions is absolutely perfect.
I have a vision for that arrow from the very beginning that I'm going hunting. You have to have the correct focus and intent throughout the process. Any little step along the process that you don't do correctly could mean that the end product will not work for you. It could be the arrow's not gonna fly right at the end, it might not fly right for you, or that arrow may just decide that it's not gonna kill anything, and it'll just miss.
After several hours of work, the rods are perfectly straight.
That's about right.
Nathaniel can now move on to the last step. Meanwhile, in the Beartooth Mountains, Rick and Casey have embarked on a hunt for the mountain lion and have already located the tracks of a large male. But the tracks on the trail look too old for Casey's dog Cash to follow. But Casey doesn't give up. He promised Rick, who's never tracked a mountain lion, his first opportunity to hunt this great predator.
What do you got, Casey?
Here, take a look. Got a kitten track.
Okay.
And then got mom's track. There's actually a female and kitten. That was a little bit fresher, but still a couple days old.
All of that was encouraging. In the span of 10 miles, we found the location where at least 4 cats were.
Mountain lions are nearby. Casey decides to change course to find fresher tracks. Casey brings Rick to another area of the mountain where the young hunter has found mountain lions in the past. But the sun has been shining for several days here, and all the winter snow has melted. This makes it difficult to track the movements of the cat. And the terrain makes their progress more and more difficult.
When we left the first location and went to basically the other side of the mountain, I had my doubts. I'm not an experienced cat hunter, but the snow conditions I suspected were going to be worse than what we'd experienced in the first location. When we got there, the access into that area was very rugged, very rough. It was going over one boulder onto another, onto another.
The two hunters are continuously looking for mountain lion tracks, but they're losing daylight and their chances of success are slowly dwindling. And to make it worse, this new trail is putting their vehicles to the test, making it increasingly difficult to follow the trail. Meanwhile, in Big Hole Valley, Scott Olson is in the middle of the woods. He has to find a tree to cut down and bring home through the thick layer of snow. Their woodpile has significantly decreased due to the extreme winter temperatures, and the Arctic front coming from the north doesn't appear to be ready to leave.
It's been a pretty deep winter and it's been really cold. And watching the weather last night, we're in for a whole week of sub-zero, 10 to 30 below weather.
With years spent in the mountains, Scott only has to look at a tree for a few seconds to determine if it's one he wants to cut and bring home.
There may be a beautiful knot twist up there that I see that I could use for a piece of furniture. There's also trees that are very, very straight, that are very good diameter, perfect for making lumber out of. And there's other trees that are all twisted up and gnarly, but don't have very many branches. They're straight. those become really good for firewood.
With such deep snow, Scott has to find a tree that requires the least amount of effort to move.
So here's another tree coming through the woods. Goes up and it bends out into the meadow there. So a 99% chance when I cut this tree, it's gonna fall that way, which makes getting it a lot easier than having it hang up in some of these other trees.
Scott ends up choosing a tree that should allow him to restock his woodpile. It looks perfect. As he prepares to cut it down, he realizes something. Although it looks clear, there are 3 huge trees in the way of where the tree he cuts could fall. So Scott has to be extremely precise. He'll have to make a cut at the base of the trunk so that it will fall just to the left of the 3 large pines. And it worked. With only inches to spare, the tree grazed the other trees on its way down. Scott is definitely a real professional lumberjack. Always equipped with his snowshoes, he can now cut up the tree to make as much firewood as possible. Next mission, bring all the wood home. Meanwhile, near the small town of Molt at the Hollenbeck Ranch, Dr. Rowe, the veterinarian, begins a very long day. With the help of Henry and Sarah, he has to ultrasound all the ewes for lambs that will be sold at the biggest auction in the state. The result of this sale will be crucial for the ranch. It's critical that a maximum number of ewes are pregnant so they can sell the lambs at the auction. And the livestock has to be of the highest quality.
This sale's a way for people to come and buy anywhere from 2 ewes to 200 to 1,000. You'll have buyers from all over the U.S. purchasing the sheep. A lot goes to the West Coast, Oregon and Washington and California. We've been selling at this sale every year for quite a few years, so it's important for us to sell quality animals. That way people want to continue to buy from you.
Good? Yep.
The vet we have out here, he represents the sale. He will ultrasound every ewe that goes through the sale barn.
That's the skull. You use that for the measurements of the age. Most time we make sure they're big enough and we're good to go. But today, I think we're checking about between 300 and 400.
The Hollenbeck sheep are among the best in the state, and for the past several years, the reproduction rate in Sarah and Henry's flock has been excellent. But this winter, their animals have to face their worst enemy, the blizzard. Sheep are generally resistant to snow and cold. But when blizzards hit, the animals are subjected to extreme stress, which increases the risk of miscarriage during the pregnancy period.
This year was extreme. We had a terrible amount of wind and it was brutal cold. I mean, there for 10, 15 days, it was negative 30 for a high. And it's just real frigid. You know, we can handle snow and we can handle negative degrees, but when you get the wind, it's a whole different ball game.
Even a tree has a hard time withstanding some of the winters out here. So an animal is also gonna have a hard time. This winter in particular, even people that have lived here their whole lives have said it's one of the worst ones they've ever seen.
This day with the veterinarian is pretty determining for the Hollenbecks. They'll know if the blizzard over the last few days has reduced fertility or resulted in miscarriages.
See, you can see the ribs right there. See the heart beating? Good. Yep, good.
If a lot of them are not pregnant, that's bad news. That means you're gonna be close on, being able to pay the rent on the ranch or, to be able to buy enough feed. How big are they?
There's a skull right here. Right there at the corner.
Yeah.
We'll barely catch it.
The first hours of the day are rather reassuring.
Yeah.
Through his examinations, Dr. Rowe has determined that for the moment, the vast majority of the ewes are expecting.
And 2 squares is 60 days. So 60 days would put us at the end of March. So end of March, 1st April.
During the examination, the veterinarian can determine the stage of the pregnancy. Henry then marks the animal with a color: green for those who'll give birth in March, blue in April, and purple in May.
It's middle-aged 2 or 3s and 4s.
The sheep are then tagged according to their age.
Makes a big difference in their pricing, how much they'll go for. A younger pregnant ewe will obviously go for more than an older ewe.
After about 10 hours of examinations, the veterinarian is finished, and Henry and Sarah are relieved. The sheep seem to have survived the blizzard.
Today went pretty well. We were probably just over 90% conception, and the ewes had good condition on them. This is a good year compared to the amount of weather that we've had.
There's Grandpa. We were very relieved, obviously. If things hadn't worked out well, if a lot of the ewes weren't pregnant, then that's when we have to explore other ideas of what are we going to do to be able to supply our income and to make sure that we can keep surviving as a ranching family.
In a few weeks, the first lambs will arrive. Until then, the weather is still a threat. Henry and Sarah will have to increase their vigilance so that their animals will survive if the conditions deteriorate. At the Hollenbecks, it's safe to say that winter is far from over. Meanwhile, at Canyon Mountain, Nathaniel Browning is putting the final touches on his arrows.
You can't put 2 feathers together from one wing and 1 feather from the other wing. It's gonna screw up the way your arrow flies. It's gonna make it spin wrong. So you wanna have them with the same helix to them all, where they all bend the same direction, from the same wing, right next to each other on the wing.
Use about 1/2 inch there, so I'm gonna get rid of that.
This is sinew. This is from the leg tendons of a deer. So it comes out as a thick chunk. You break it off into smaller little pieces and pull it off of there. So you get it wet, it's flexible, and then as it dries, it's got a natural glue on it, and so it'll bind to itself and dry really tight. But in order to get this wet, you don't just soak it in water. You gotta chew it.
It's really good. Delicious.
So you chew it up for a little while. Doesn't taste too bad, because I know why dogs like jerky so much. You pull it out of there. It's this little thin strip here. And now it's flexible. You can tie it on or take it off. As this sits there, dries super hard, dense, and won't come off. Wrapped on pretty good. His feathers are tight on there.
Once the feathers are perfectly positioned on the arrow, Nathaniel can finally attach the last piece, and perhaps the most important, the tip of the arrow. To make this, the hunter uses obsidian from the volcanic rock found in Montana. Nathaniel has patiently collected many pieces of rock during his expeditions in the mountains. He chooses the very best ones and turns them into sharp points.
You wrap it up really tight with that sinew, and that'll hold it all together. Because that sinew is stronger than the wood itself. Most people, when they think of putting an arrowhead on, they think of a big, giant arrowhead. But really, it's a small one, so it's balanced, flies straight and fast. Only leaves a small little cutting hole, but it's not about how big the arrowhead actually is, it's about where you put it. Because this thing slides through the right place of something, and it'll kill it and bleed it out really fast.
Nathaniel finally finished turning the 5 branches he collected in the forest into perfectly straight arrows, ready to be used during the next hunting season.
When I finish the arrow, there is a sense of satisfaction in having completed something that is so beautiful and so utilitarian at the same time that you can really use. And then I always look at it and think I could have done better also. So I always hope that as good as I would like it to be, but I always know that I can do better in the end as well. As soon as you think you know something, you know you don't know anything at all.
Nathaniel is not ready yet for the next hunting season because he now has to tackle a new project. He has to make a new bow. Meanwhile, in the Beartooth Mountains, Rick and Casey continue their mountain lion tracking. They try their luck in a new area of the mountain. But here, the terrain is very hilly and the snow is almost completely melted. The mountain lion tracks are increasingly difficult to locate, and the hunters have trouble staying in touch with each other.
When we were going along, I noticed that he was trailing behind a little bit. After a while, he kept getting further and further away, and then I kept getting deeper into the timber.
And as Casey's four-wheeler disappears into the woods, Rick is faced with an unexpected turn of events.
As we progressed further into the drainage and got into a little more rugged area, and then as we dropped down into a creek bottom and I went to start up, I'd heard something when I was going through the boulders had snapped. With an ATV, I mean, you hear all sorts of different noises all the time. Well, when I got into the bottom of the drainage and tried to go further up, and then I realized it had a big problem with the transmission. In that area, you can probably only maintain visual contact for 30 yards, 35 yards. Well, unbeknownst to Casey that I was having trouble, he had kept on going.
After a few minutes, Casey realizes that Rick is no longer behind him. He decides to turn back.
What? It's either the rear end or the transmission.
Snapped?
Well, I don't know if it snapped, but anyway, coming through the rocks there and stuff, all I've got's front-wheel drive now.
Really?
I was glad to see Casey come back. We tried to diagnose the problem and see exactly what had taken place, and it was evident that there was a major problem in the transmission or transfer case of the ATV because I had front-wheel drive, but I had no rear-wheel drive. It basically made it impossible to go forward in an uphill environment. But I'm at the end of my road.
You think? You want to try crawling up on that drag ground?
Yeah, I may be able to make it there.
I might have some rope or something.
I've got a whole bunch of rope here, Casey, but
When you break down, you break down. You can't do anything about it. Just wait there till somebody comes back for you and picks you up.
This breakdown right in the middle of the woods ends the hunt for Casey and Rick.
You can't really tear apart an entire four-wheeler chassis out in the woods. There's no sense of going on any further. We don't have any snow. We got one four-wheeler that's broke down. It's getting late in the day. You don't want to be stuck out in the woods in the dark.
All right.
You know, this really sucks. I was very disappointed at the time of the breakdown because it was just that door of opportunity had closed and the whole scene was different at that point.
Thanks, Casey. You're welcome.
I'm really hoping next time we go out, we will find something fresher that we can run. I'll try my damnedest to find a track to get him on. There's always another day.
Meanwhile, in Big Hole Valley, Scott Olson is back home. He came to fetch something to transport the tree that he cut down in the woods. Unfortunately, Scott had not planned to restock his wood this winter, and the sled he usually uses to carry the logs in the snow has been buried by the harsh weather of the Big Hole Valley.
I've got a sled here that I've built. It's got water skis on the bottom somewhere, and it's got a nice box that I can put the firewood in and pull it back over. It should slide pretty nice on the snow like a sledge.
The day has definitely not been easy for Scott Olson, but the mountain man knows he has no choice. Even at minus 30 degrees and in almost 3 feet of fresh snow, he has to clear the sled in order to get the wood he's just cut back home.
Nature doesn't care. All nature cares about is you're there, you're in her space, you live by her rules.
Once his sled is dug out, Scott has to go back to the woods with his snowcat to finally retrieve all the wood he's cut. It's the final efforts of the day for Scott Olson. He knows that he'll soon be rewarded for all the hard work he's put into this effort.
You realize that as nature tries to throw this cold thing at you, you've done what you need to do to prepare to be able to adapt and live with that. So at the end of the day, you remember the old saying that getting wood warms you twice. Once getting the wood as you're sweating and going through the efforts of getting the wood, and second, when you light the wood and you're able to lay there with a cup of hot chocolate in front of the fireplace and realize that you accomplished something that day and you can enjoy the heat of that wood.
In Big Hole Valley, the cold weather from the Arctic front is likely to stay around for weeks. But Scott is ready for it. Like every winter, the Olson's chimney will smoke for a long time.